I call this session the inner butterfly effect. How chaos gets started in your mind, your emotions, and your body, and what to do about it. So what do I mean by this phrase, the butterfly effect? Well, I'm talking about a concept. It was a term that was coined by a guy that was studying chaos theory. And he said, could a butterfly flapping its wings in Beijing trigger a storm in Kansas? And as it turns out, these little things can trigger big things much later. In systems theory, they look for this kind of stuff and they say, how do these little tiny things trigger all of these big effects? And how do big effects have, other effects on other smaller things and bigger things like them? And how does all this cause effect stuff work? And it's really interesting. Well, the inner butterfly is the inner butterfly that's flapping its wings in Beijing, causing the storm in Kansas is, mentally. Have you ever had a thought where something pops up in your mind and then it triggers another thought and then another thought and they just start swirling and swirling, and before you know it, a half hour's gone and you've got nothing done except worrying or thinking about the exact same things that you thought about yesterday? And it's all a bunch of just thoughts that, swirled up and created a hurricane in your mind. I've found that, this process can be like a train. I mean, it can be like a freight train picking up steam. And once your mind gets going, you just can't stop. It's the inner butterfly chaos of the mind. What about emotionally? What about emotional butterflies? Well, this is the process where you have an emotion that gets triggered by something, okay? Typically by a thought or something external happens. You go, oh, and you get fear, or something happens and, you start to, get excited about something, or something happens and, it triggers jealousy or some other emotion, and then that triggers another emotion and another, and then they start layering on top of each other. And then what does that do? Well, it triggers a bunch of thoughts, and then the thoughts trigger the emotions, and it gets going. What about the physical aspect? What about physical butterflies? Well, there are a lot of different examples of this, but some people, they can't stop fidgeting, and they start fidgeting and they get busy and they focus on their fidgeting, and then that makes them nervous and they start feeling more nervous. Or how about an external physical butterfly? An area where you're disorganized. Maybe you lose your keys all the time, and as you're hunting around looking for your keys, you get distracted and you lose something else, or you find something you haven't found in a while and that distracts you, and then you're going through something else. Or maybe you have a totally messy work area and everything's gone, you're always digging through it, and this acts as a chaos fire starter. And next thing you know, you're just lost in this thing. And of course, these all work together. These are all what I call inner butterflies. And what we want to do is, I think we want to see just how big this challenge really is. We want to look at ourselves and be really honest and examine our inner butterflies and realize just how much we have a thought and it triggers another thought, and it triggers another one and another one and another one, and just how much we have an emotion and it triggers another and another, and just how much we get a little disorganized physically and it just throws us off completely. And we want to realize this and be honest, because we're going to be doing some things to cultivate more focus and to cultivate the ability to stay on one thing and to just keep working to get results in one area. And if we're going to do that, we really need to make friends with this area and be honest about it, and bring the thing that's in the shadow into the light. Bring the thing that's the elephant in the room that no one's talking about into consciousness and say, hey, there's an elephant in the room. Now, most of us want to act like we're totally together, like this stuff never happens to us. No, I control what I think and what I feel and what I do. But if you were honest with me, I think that you would admit that constantly your mind runs off and you start thinking about things. I'll even give you a little treat here, because this is one of my favorite areas of psychology. They've done experiments with people and with animals that unfortunately I probably wouldn't say we should do again, but they've learned a lot of amazing things. In one case, I remember reading about someone who I think they had epileptic seizures, and they had the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers that separates or that connects the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain, and they severed that in a person to help them with their epilepsy. And then they did some psychological experiments where they showed a message to one of their eyes. And I don't know if you know this, but your left brain, the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body. You're cross-wired. This is the way most people are wired. And so if you cut the corpus callosum and they can't talk to each other anymore, if you show something to someone's right eye, it'll affect their left brain. Their left brain will be reading it. And if you show something to someone's left eye, it'll go into their right brain. So what they would do is they would show someone, they'd show their left eye like, a picture of a Coca-Cola, but their right eye couldn't see it. And they weren't conscious of what's going on because the right brain is the abstract, conceptual, not in time kind of creative brain. And they'd show it to the person, and then they'd stop, and then the person would stand up and walk out of the room and go to the Coke machine and get a Coke and come back and sit down and start drinking it. And the left brain was not aware of why it happened. So they would say to the person, "Why did you just get up and get a Coke?" And the person would say, I was thirsty and a Coke just sounded good. And they would retrospectively make up a story to make it work. There's another great experiment from hypnosis where a hypnotherapist hypnotized someone, and while they were hypnotized, had them open up an umbrella and then hold it over their head, and then they brought them out of hypnosis while they were holding the umbrella, and the person came out and looked at the umbrella and realized they were there, and the hypnotherapist said, "Why do you have an umbrella open in here?" And the person said, "Because it was raining." And these things are very telling, actually, because we do this stuff all the time. We make up reasons for why we do things. We rationalize. We come up with the logic and the reason why we did stuff as if we were totally in control of it. And we're really not. We're actually driven by a lot of passions and drives that we're not aware of. We're not as in control as we think. So becoming more honest, admitting that we do this stuff and admitting that we're a lot more susceptible to inner butterflies, logical, emotional, physical than we think, that's like the first step to recovery.